A little non-fact of World War I is that its first Navy battle took place on August 13th, 1914, on Lake Malawi in southern Africa. The conflict in eastern southern Africa was perhaps the least known and understood front of the World War I. It was a massive mobile conflict fought across an area larger than France, Germany, and England combined, where colonial troops from Britain, Belgium, Portugal, and Germany sought to divert each other's resources from the main battlefields in Europe. While the German colonies in West Africa fell quickly, German East Africa GEA became a protracted struggle. World War I was caused by decades of European tension rooted in militarism, rigid alliances, fierce imperialism over global territory, and aggressive nationalism. The spark, the 1914 assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, ignited this tinderbox. The war instantly extended to the colonies. The British Protectorate of Nyasa land, now Malawi, bordered part of the vast German colony of German East Africa, now Tanzania. Between the two lay Lake Nyasa, now Lake Malawi, a massive African Great Lake and the artery of colonial power, which forms the southernmost part of the East African Rift Valley system. With a surface area of over 11,000 square miles, the lake is 350 miles long and 47 miles wide at its widest point. Control of the lake meant the ability to move troops and supplies and maintain lines of communication in a campaign where lack of supply killed more troops than bullets. Control of the lake was the difference between whether Nyasaland was thrown entirely onto the defensive or could survive. The stage for the first battle of World War I was set on the tranquil waters of Lake Nyasa, a location far from the trenches of Europe, and the combatants were far from strangers. The resources available to Nyasaland were limited, and its troops were concentrated far to the south, around Fort Johnston, now Mangochi. Moving them north to defend the frontier at Karonga was nearly impossible without the lake. British control of the lake was not guaranteed because the Germans had a formidable vessel, the SMS Hermann von Wissmann. This 87-foot, 100-ton steamship was built in Germany, transported overland in sections, and launched on the lake in 1893. It was named after a German explorer and administrator who had commanded German troops in putting down the 1888 Abushiri Revolt and was originally intended to fight the slave trade. The Wissmann was a grave threat. It was armed with at least one one-pounder gun, known as the pom-pom, mounted on the foredeck, giving it a superior field of fire, a faster rate of fire, and a greater effective range than the British vessel. If the Wissmann was active, it could potentially capture British transport steamers and move an invasion force. The British answer, SS Gwendolen. The British answer was the SS Gwendolen, a larger, 130-foot armed steamer launched in 1898 and named after the author Lady Gwendolen Cecil. Though designed to carry 4 3-pounder cannons and capable of carrying 300 armed troops, the Gwendolen was mechanically unreliable and was only outfitted with 1 3-pounder cannon on the main deck, with a limited firing arc and a severe shortage of ammunition. British Captain Edmund Rhodes commanded the HMS Gwendolen. German Captain Berndt commanded the SS Hermann von Wissmann. For over a decade, these two captains had patrolled the lake with the shared mission of being on the lookout for slavers. In so doing, they had become good friends and drinking partners, even engaging their ships in mock battles with each other. August 13th, 1914, the naval anticlimax. Because no one was tweeting about it, it took a while for word of the hostilities to reach East Africa. Fortunately for Captain Rhodes, he was the first to learn that his friend Captain Berndt was now officially his enemy. Rhodes knew the Visman posed a serious threat to British transport and was a necessary first target. The crucial intelligence arrived. The Hermann von Wissmann was laid up for repairs at the remote German port of Sphinxhaven, present-day Liuli, on the Tanzanian side of Lake Malawi. Despite the senior officer advising against an encounter, the Gwendolen was dispatched with orders to disable, but not absolutely destroy, the German ship in the hope it could eventually be captured. On the evening of August 13th, 1914, Rhodes went in search of his prey. He found the von Wissmann hauled onto the beach at Sphinxhaven, now Liuli port, on the Tanzanian side, undergoing repairs. Rhodes gave the order to open fire. The ancient ammunition was unreliable. The first round was a dud. The next few missed. And finally, he scored a hit, doing some minor damage. A rowboat quickly appeared, with a furious Captain Burnt rowing toward the Gwendolen. Burnt stood in his rowboat and shook his fists, reportedly yelling, "God damn, Rhodes! Are you drunk?" Rhodes replied, "Afraid not, old chap," explaining that their countries were at war and Burnt needed to surrender. "Surrender be hanged," Burnt retorted. "Come and have a drink." Rhodes replied with another, more accurate shot that destroyed the von Wissmann's smokestack. Burnt finally realized his friend meant business and gave up. The first naval battle of World War I was a battle in name only. No one was injured in the fighting. Rhodes took the von Wissmann's gun and disabled the ship. Then, as was tradition, the pair got back to drinking. However, Captain Burnt was taken as a prisoner of war after the drinking session. Alas, the friendly arrangement could not last, as there were British and German troops in the area who would soon begin to make war upon each other. This swift action by Captain Rhodes, though anticlimactic, allowed important naval support for British troops in the region and secured the crucial lake transport route. The naval dominance allowed the British to concentrate the Nyasa Land Field Force, NFF, at the northern border, present-day Karonga. In the ensuing years, the little-remembered East African campaign raged on. In 1915, with a new commander in charge of the Gwendolen, the von Wissmann was further damaged in another attack. The control of Lake Nyasa, secured by a single fortunate shot, protected the British supply lines and, in 1916, allowed the British to use the lake to launch an invasion of German East Africa almost without opposition. The Hermann von Wissmann, which the Germans never managed to sail during the war, was eventually captured by the British, repaired, renamed the HMS King George, and continued to sail on Lake Nyasa clear until 1950. The German forces, led by the tenacious General Paul Emil von Lettow-Vorbeck, continued a mobile guerrilla war until the armistice in 1918. This prolonged conflict had a catastrophic human toll. The losses were far more devastating for the African population. Hundreds of thousands of native troops and porters died, most of them from disease and starvation due to the disruption of supply lines and crops. As the campaign moved, it destroyed crops and villages, leading to famine and greater susceptibility to the 1918 influenza pandemic. As a result, millions died. As much as 20% of the population of German East Africa, including modern-day Burundi, Rwanda, and most of Tanzania, perished as a result of the conflict and the subsequent influenza. The cost of this colonial war was most keenly felt by the African people, whose sacrifices were dismissed by some colonial officials who cynically asked, "Who cares about native carriers?" The control of Lake Nyasa, secured by a single fortunate shot, protected the British supply lines and, in 1916, allowed the British to use the lake to launch an invasion of German East Africa almost without opposition. The Hermann von Wissmann, which the Germans never managed to sail during the war, was eventually captured by the British, repaired, renamed the HMS King George, and continued to sail on Lake Nyasa clear until 1950.